Today, we're unpacking the 2026 energy shock. We're going to trace how one military conflict in one of the world's most sensitive spots sent massive financial shockwaves across the entire globe. It disrupted literally everything, from oil prices all the way to the cost of your food. Let's dive in.
So it really all boils down to this question, right? I mean, how is that even possible? It sounds kind of crazy, but the global economy really does have a few critical arteries, and if one of them gets clogged, the whole system starts to feel the pressure. We're about to see exactly how that played out.
So what lit the fuse? What was the spark that set this whole thing ablaze? Well, like a lot of these huge global crises, it all started with a sudden and really dramatic military move that pretty much caught the entire world completely off guard.
And things escalated fast. I mean, unbelievably fast. On February 28, 2026, joint U.S.-Israeli strikes called Operation Epic Fury hit Iran, and in those strikes, its supreme leader was killed. Iran's response was almost instant, a huge barrage of missiles and drones aimed at U.S. bases and at Israel. But the move that really changed the game came just a few hours later, when Iran's Revolutionary Guard sent out a simple but absolutely chilling warning to every ship in the region. The Strait of Hormuz is now a no-go zone.
And that warning? Well, that brings us right to the geographical heart of this crisis. We're talking about one tiny little strip of water that, believe it or not, holds an immense amount of power over the global economy.
The Strait of Hormuz. I mean, look at it. At its narrowest point, it's only about 21 miles wide. But don't let that fool you. This is, without a doubt, the single most important energy artery in the entire world. It's the only way for ships to get from the Persian Gulf out into the open ocean, which makes it absolutely essential for global oil and gas.
And to put a number on that so it really sinks in, a full 20%. 1/5 of all the oil the entire planet uses every single day sails right through that narrow channel. So yeah, you can see how any disruption here isn't just some regional problem, it's a global one. That one number tells you everything you need to know about what's at stake.
And the impact? It was immediate. Bam, just like that. After Iran's warnings and a few reported attacks on tankers, traffic through the strait just plummeted. In the first couple of days, we're talking a staggering 70% drop. The world's most critical energy choke point was effectively being sealed shut right before our eyes. Now, here's the really interesting part about how this strait actually closed. It wasn't just a military blockade. The real final nail in the coffin was financial. Global insurance companies basically said, nope, we are not providing war risk coverage for any ship that tries to go through there. And suddenly, the economic risk became so unbelievably high that the strait was, for all intents and purposes, closed. It was technically still open, but commercially, it was a ghost town. So, with the strait paralyzed, the dominoes really started to fall. And the first and loudest reaction came from exactly where you'd expect, the global energy markets. They just went haywire.
The price of Brent crude oil, the main global benchmark, it tells the whole story. Before this crisis, it was trading at a pretty stable $72 a barrel. Almost overnight, it spiked 13% to over $82. A war premium was instantly priced into every single barrel of oil on the planet. And all the analysts were warning that this was just the beginning. You had experts like Mohammed Imran saying that if this disruption kept going, oil prices could easily surge up into the $120, maybe even $150 range. And a price like that, well, that's the kind of thing that can tip already fragile economies right into a recession.
But this wasn't just an oil crisis. Oh no. The impact on natural gas was, if you can believe it, even more dramatic. Qatar, a titan in the world of liquefied natural gas, or LNG, had to suspend its production because it couldn't ship anything out of the Gulf. The result? European gas prices, which were already on edge, just exploded. They jumped 50% in just 2 days. 50%!
So in the middle of all this chaos, there was this really fascinating and kind of counterintuitive story playing out in the precious metals market. You've got these two sister metals, gold and silver, and they went in completely opposite directions. And it all comes down to their different roles in the economy. Gold did exactly what you expect gold to do in a crisis. It played its classic part as the ultimate safe haven. As fear took over the markets, investors just piled in, pushing its price to a record high. But silver's a different story. Over half of all silver is used for industrial stuff. So as fears of a global recession started to grow, traders figured the factories would shut down and demand would just collapse. so silver's price actually crashed by 7%.
You can see this split perfectly in what's called the gold to silver ratio. It's basically just how many ounces of silver it takes to buy 1 ounce of gold. As that ratio surged up to 57-1, it was like a market-wide fear gauge going deep into the red. It was a clear signal that investors were dumping anything tied to economic growth and were fleeing to the ultimate safety of gold.
Of course, this massive energy price shock didn't just stay in the financial markets. Like a tremor, its effects started to ripple outwards, hitting other essential parts of the global economy, one by one.
And here is a perfect and honestly kind of scary example of that ripple effect. Remember that 50% spike in natural gas we just talked about? Well, it turns out that natural gas accounts for up to 90% of the cost of producing ammonia. And ammonia is the key ingredient in nitrogen fertilizer. So you see where this is going. Gas prices go up, fertilizer prices follow, and all of a sudden, the cost of producing food for farmers all around the world is threatened.
And to see the real-world economic pain this causes, just look at this case study for India. For a major energy importer like them, a long-term oil price spike is absolutely devastating. This scenario shows that just a $30 per barrel increase would shave almost 0.5% off their GDP growth while adding nearly a full point to inflation. Slower growth and higher prices. That's the classic, painful recipe for stagflation.
And India is definitely not alone here. This crisis just threw a giant spotlight on how extremely vulnerable some major Asian economies are. Both India and China depend on the strait for huge amounts of their energy. But for countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, which really rely on that Qatari LNG and have very little storage, the suspension of shipments raises the immediate and very real threat of severe power shortages. So you see, an oil shock is never just about the price you pay at the pump. It's a systemic event. It hits inflation hard, which can weaken a country's currency, which then messes up trade balances, and ultimately, it just ripples through every single corner of an economy.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The 2026 crisis was a stark, brutal reminder of just how fragile our globalized world can be. It showed how quickly a regional conflict can become everyone's problem, leaving all of us with a really critical question to think about. Just how resilient are the supply chains that we all depend on for, well, pretty much everything?
Thank you for watching. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video.